So Sam Mayer-Loughnane lines up in the Mercedes on pole position, the reigning champion Simon Orange in the McLaren, the blue car with the orange flashes that sits alongside, and we get round 6 of the championship underway. Lucky Kira looks to try and get a good start and almost makes it 3 wide up towards Paddock Hill Bend. That's brave stuff. Is anybody going to run out of room? No. And Lucky Kira is still maintaining the opportunity to try and draw himself alongside Simon Orange on the run in towards the braking area for Druids, but Lucky way too late on the brakes on cold tyres and just about keeps the car out of the gravel trap as he descends downhill and still actually hangs on to 3rd place as well. Brave stuff in the early stages, but you can't fault Lucky Kira for trying to prise the door open and get a place early on. So down the Cooper Straight they will all work their way. And as they then turn their way in towards the left hand, you can see a little bit of cement dust on the track there from one of the earlier support races that has been put down to soak up the oil or the lubricant that was put down there. But it is Sam Mayer-Loughnane, the Irishman for DriveTac, that leads the race at this stage. That's the car that James Wallace will take over a little bit later on. So they lead the way at this stage. Now, was that a little bit of contact there? I saw a puff of smoke there from the Aston Martin as they turned their way through what was Hawthorne Bend, and that puff of smoke came as Gilbert Yates at the wheel of the Lamborghini was trying to work his way through. Gilbert Yates off the back of the grid. I think there were a few issues after race number 1 for a few drivers and conversations going on in race control, and therefore the grid slightly shuffled, and I think some penalties have been applied, but not had the chance to do the admin to catch up on exactly what those were for. So threading their way out of Stirling's. Watch out for Gilbert Yates, I would say, in that Lamborghini. Here he comes again up the outside of Chris Murphy's BMW. The number 11 car started the race in 24th position on the grid, and by the time Gilbert Yates comes over the start finish line at the end of lap number 1, he's up to 16th place. So that has not been a bad first lap at all for Gilbert Yates. And the pro driver David MacDonald scheduled to take over that car. So when we get to the pit window for the cars in Group GT, Group GT3 and Group GTC, which is between the 24th and the 29th minute of the race. So in other words, when the countdown timer at the top of the screen gets to 26 minutes remaining, that's when that pit window will open. It will remain open for 5 minutes for those cars in that group. So Sam Mayer-Loughnane leading the way, Simon Orange in 2nd position in the McLaren, Lucky Kira in 3rd. Morgan Tilbrook is up to 4th, which means that down to 5th has gone Morgan Short, but Morgan Short will still be leading Group GTO in the early stages, and that's a spin, and that's a problem, I'm afraid, for Warren Gilbert, who is scheduled to have started the Top Cats Racing Lamborghini. That looks like that is the exit of Surtees Corner, where this car has spun to the inside. And can he get the car fired back up again, or does that mean that the car is going to retire? Squabbling still continues in the meantime. Russ Lindsay in the Porsche trying to keep at bay the Lamborghini, and this will be for Group GTC honours as well, whilst another Group GTC car still gets stricken there at that part of the circuit. This begs the question, if you can't get it fired up, is that going to bring about a safety car? Because the marshal's post at that point of the circuit is on the opposite side of the track, so it's not the easiest point to get to for our fantastic Brands Hatch marshals. So up towards the conclusion of lap number 2 have already come our race leaders. There goes Gilbert Yates picking up another place off Russ Lindsay. So that now means that Gilbert Yates is up to 2nd in Group GTC. Brilliant run through the order. So from 24th to 16th, from 16th to 12th. Now the car ahead of him, that light blue Lamborghini, is the Group GTC leader at this stage in the hands of Matty Evans, who's scheduled to start that car. So I don't know what they fed Gilbert Yates between race 1 and race 2, but he's charged his way through the field. Localised yellow flags on the run in towards Surtees Corner still suggests that the Lamborghini is stricken there in the hands of Warren Gilbert and is still going nowhere. But couldn't see whether it has moved its position or not. You can see the yellow flag on the way into the corner, which suggests that the Lambo, I'm afraid, is still not going anywhere at the moment. So, yeah, there is Warren Gilbert, still stricken there. I think deemed enough to be out of harm's way at this stage, because it's an unusual place to go off, and hopefully they'll just cover it with localised yellows. Drivers go past it a couple of times, they'll know. Now has Gilbert Yates got the overlap this time on Matty Evans? Not quite. The Liqui-Moly car just chops across the nose of Gilbert Yates. So the Blackthorn Lamborghini in the hands of Gilbert Yates still can't quite as yet take up the lead of Group GTC. Both Super Trofeo spec Lamborghinis. They're not GT3 cars, these are Super Trofeo spec Lamborghinis. Slightly older iteration of one in the hands of Matty Evans, the slightly newer one, because it's got the spoiler down the centre of the rear windscreen of the car in reality. So can he get through this time? No, still the light blue one, but it looks as though Gilbert Yates gets a better run coming out of Paddock Hill Bend, and he's able to sneak his way through to pick up the lead in Group GTC, and that will now put him up into 11th place overall, having started 24th on the grid. Brilliant stuff. Now Warren Gilbert has finally got the Lamborghini fired up and going. Quite what caused the spin we didn't catch. If it's anything like a mechanical issue, Warren straight away will be into the pit lane. If not, he'll crack on out there still. And I'm sure it was Warren Gilbert that was scheduled to have started that car based on the information that we received. So there it goes. Yeah, it does come back over the start-finish line, so it looks as though all is good. But yeah, all of the harm has been done already. Yeah, Warren Gilbert scheduled to start based on the information that we've got. Charlotte Gilbert will be very frustrated in the pit lane that, for whatever reason, didn't quite go to the master plan for them. But either way, Warren will try and put that to one side. He's off the lead lap already. He's lost a couple of laps almost, and might be in danger of losing another one here, because Sam Mayer-Lachlan, the Irishman, who leads the race, is closing up on him, and he can't afford to be delayed through the traffic as well, because Simon Orange is driving beautifully well, driving like a champion. Difficult weekend for him at Donington Park, Simon Orange, but back with a bounce this weekend, sharing the car with the Welshman Tom Roach. And as they then start to build the speed again and descend through Pilgrim's Drop and Hawthorne Hill, is he closing, ever closing? You see, not that far away is Lucky Kira. Morgan Tilbrook is not too far away and has just posted the fastest lap of the race that we've seen so far. 1 minute 26.488 for Morgan Tilbrook. Now for Sam Mayer-Lachlan, the race leader, he'll hand over to James Wallace, the race one winner. For the car that's in second place, Simon Orange, he'll give way to Tom Roach. Lucky Kira in third place will give way to Ewan Hankey, who certainly knows how to pedal a McLaren. He's been doing it for a huge amount of years now. And in fourth place, Morgan Tilbrook will give way to Marcus Clutton, former British GT champion from a few years ago, and former Radical UK champion. So over the start-finish line, they work their way 4 as 1. All of these cars running to GT3 specifications, so they all run in Group GT3. In fifth place, we now have Sasha Kakad, who is up into 5th place. Richard Chamberlain comes up into 6th and leads Group GTO now. That was a lap that was a little bit slower from Morgan Short. Lost 3 places, is still running around in an 8th position, but the car that time through was 10 seconds slower than it had previously gone. And where did it lose all of that time? The answer is through all 3 sectors. It wasn't as though it was just one sector. And there and off and into the gravel trap, I'm afraid. And that is Sam Mayer-Lachlan that's gone off. So the race leader is off, just caught the tail end of it there. And Sam Mayer-Lachlan is off and into the gravel trap up there at Surtees. Now, I was busy looking at the sector times from Morgan Short's Mosler as to where he had lost the time, which meant that by the time I just caught the tail end of Sam Mayer-Lachlan's spin, I couldn't tell whether there'd been any touch in any way, shape or form. What I can tell you is it's now 3 for the lead, and Warren Gilbert at the wheel of the Top Cats Racing Lamborghini, he is desperate not to try and lose another lap, but at some point he's going to have to yield and let the quicker cars through. So Group GTC Lamborghini already off the lead lap. Warren's been around racing for a good number of years. He's not going to make it easy for them, but they should, through the twiddly parts, have the opportunity. And Simon Orange goes up the inside, through goes Lucky Kira, through goes Morgan Tilbrook, and they're trudging away rather disconsolately. There's erstwhile race leader, which is Sam Mayer-Lachlan. So safety car boards come out. I think Warren Gilbert, understandably with other cars around him, didn't quite realise, and instantly, as soon as he realised they were slowing up, backed off and gave any position back. Just sometimes some drivers see the boards a split second earlier than others, and when that happens, you know, if you don't lift off and another driver does, of course you're going to go by, but you do it inadvertently, and straight away Warren Gilbert giving those positions back, aware that, yeah, just spotted something. And safety car is waiting. It didn't quite get out onto the Cooper straight to pick up the race leader, so what it's now going to do is it's going to sit there for another lap. It will wait. The cars know that they are under safety car. They will continue round and close up the gaps, but the safety car will wait until everybody has passed it, and then next time it will work its way back out onto the tarmac down there on the Cooper straight and wait patiently for the race leader to come through. So it's Simon Orange that leads the way from Lucky Keir in second place and Morgan Tilbrook in third. Sasha Kakad's there in fourth place. Nice to see that David Franklin is back out, having had damage inflicted on his Mercedes in race number 1. So the 24/7 Merc is back out. After Sasha Kakad in fourth place. Fifth is the orange Porsche of Richard Chamberlain, as we look at the Drive Tack Racing car of Sam Mayer-Lockman there in the gravel trap at Surtees Corner. And then after Richard Chamberlain in fifth place, leading Group GTO, second in Group GTO will be Paul Bailey in the Brabham BT62, and third in GTO will be Morgan Short. So it's quite close really, 5th, 6th and 7th, 1st, 2nd and 3rd in Group GTO. Then after 7th place, 8th place will be Seamus Jennings in the Porsche, 9th place will be the Group GTC leader, which is Gilbert Yates off the back of the grid, remember, and completing the top 10 will be the car that leads Group GTH at the moment, and that is the number 69 Make Happen racing car that was started by Chris Hart, who I gather might be appearing in another championship next weekend at Silverstone, but we'll wait official confirmation of that when the entry list comes out. So BMW electric safety car comes out onto track and doesn't quite pick up the race leader, but hopefully won't take long just to wave that car by. So whilst we're under safety car here at Brands Hatch, let's hand you downstairs to Piers Pryor, who's going to catch up with somebody in the pit lane.
Yeah, I'm down here in the pit lane. We've got Ed Bridle. Ed, of course, you're going to be out later on, I assume, in this race. Your teammate had a struggle, obviously, earlier on today, but going great guns so far.
Yeah, he's having a great stint or opening to the race. I've got to say, massive thank you 24/7. I think the car rolled out the pit lane with 10 seconds to go, and after that sprint race, they've been flat out for the last couple of hours rebuilding the car. So amazing job to get back out, and he's just done his quickest lap of the weekend. So it's all going well so far.
Going well, and you're looking forward to getting out on the circuit. Of course, you've got experience here in the past, but not potentially in this kind of race.
Yeah, so obviously I did the first round at Donington. I've done loads of racing here at Brands, my local circuit, but it's my first proper race on the GP circuit as such in the GT4 Merc. So yeah, I can't wait.
Can't wait indeed. And yeah, what are you thinking is going to be the greatest challenge for you as you're going out there later on?
I think the big thing around here is just GT3 traffic. Obviously, you're trying to have your own race. You don't want to get in the way of the GT3 guys, but it's just being really careful, obviously not ending up in an incident with a GT3 car, basically.
Great, well, great to hear from you. Glad that it's going better than it did in race 1. Mark, back to you in the comms.
Thanks a lot, Piers. Yeah, always good to catch up with some of the drivers down there in the pit lane. The recovery of the Drive Tack Racing with track-focused Mercedes well and truly underway, and it's just being dragged out of the gravel trap from the position at which it came to rest by one of the many trackside recovery vehicles that we've got here. The recently celebrated anniversary again since the company was set up and started delivering its recovery services here at Brands Hatch, and they continue to work tirelessly hard with MSV here at Brands Hatch, forever improving and bringing new equipment into their recovery fleet to deal with everything that they get. You know, you think of the different kinds of activities that we have here, whether it be motorcycle racing, whether it be car racing, and a very different type of recovery truck that you need when it comes to truck racing as well. You can't just use a 4x4 to drag a great big racing truck out of the gravel trap, so they work ever hard, the recovery boys and girls, and that's another good job to try and minimise the interruption of this safety car period. So they have such a huge effect on how long safety cars are. Yes, they need to recover cars quickly, but they also need to recover them sympathetically, and it's a fine balance between the two, and trackside recovery always manage to just get that balance right, because they've got the right people, the experience to do it. So there we go, job done and dusted. That 4x4 will head out of harm's way. Is Sam Mayer-Lockman going to fire up the Mercedes and head back around the circuit? I would have thought so with the positioning of that car. Now we've got 36 minutes remaining on the clock, which means it's still another 10 minutes before any of the pit windows opens. So it will be 10 minutes time where the cars, if you're running in Group GTO, Group GT3 and Group GTC, can come into the pit lane. It's going to be another 15 minutes yet before any of the cars in Group GTH can come into the pit lane. So we're going to get this safety car period out of the way before the pit window opens. Trackside recovery at the moment, they are trying to get the Sam Mayer-Lockman car out of harm's way as quickly as possible, and they are just heading off the circuit now, which does suggest that at the end of this lap we might see the safety car peel its way into the pit lane. There's Philip Carter, qualified on pole for the sprint race earlier on in the Greystone GT McLaren. Really chuffed with that was Michael Broadhurst when I saw him with a big grin from ear to ear after qualifying. The race didn't quite go the way that they wanted it, so hopefully they'll be able to scoop up a decent result in this one. Where is Philip at the moment in terms of running in Group GTH? Well, he's a little bit further down through the order. He is 6th in Group GTH as things currently stand. So we are about to get the race back underway. The lights are off on the safety car, and it will be up to Simon Orange as to when he wants to get things back underway. But as soon as he gets his foot back on that throttle, you can bet your bottom dollar that Lucky Kira, Morgan Tilbrook, Sasha Cackard, Richard Chamberlain will all go with him. But it's not a bad restart from the front too, actually. So over the start-finish line goes Simon Orange. Lucky Kira matched him on the restart, but a little bit slower away was Morgan Tilbrook. So the third place McLaren has just fallen away a shade. I don't think there were any slower cars in between them. And as they then turn their way through Druid, yeah, maybe Warren Gilbert was in between, and that was why Morgan Tilbrook couldn't overtake. But downhill and in towards the braking out for Graham Hill Bend, there goes the orange Porsche. Now, we need to keep an eye on what's going on in Group GTO, because the white Mosler is hounding the Brabham BT62. Paul Bailey is flashing his lights like Billy-O to try and let Warren Gilbert know that he wants to come through, because he can't afford to lose time. He's got Morgan Short tucked on his bumper at the moment, and those Group GTO cars should be quick in a straight line. So yeah, the roaring noise of the V8 engine Brabham works its way past Warren Gilbert, and then the thundering V8 noise of the Mosler will try and work its way through down the Derham Minter Straight. And yeah, good driving again by Warren Gilbert, and doesn't want to lose time himself, but is also sympathetic to the fact that, yeah, he is a lap adrift of everybody else, following his problems that befell him earlier on in the race. So 33 minutes to go. Cars threading their way up towards the conclusion of another lap. There goes Gilbert Yates, who has done great things at the wheel of that number 11 Lamborghini. Really impressed with what he's been able to do over the course of this race, running in Group GTC. Gilbert Yates, who first cut his teeth in things like the Ginetta Academy and did a bit of mini challenge to Gilbert, but really is going well at the wheel of this Lamborghini Super Trofeo. There's former motorcycle racer Doc Bush in a great liveried car that he's got. Doc, I think, still sort of getting up to speed with GT Cup at the moment, but it's always good to have a new character and a new face in GT Cup. And Doc, he was good mates with Andre Borodin, who is also in the field, and I think it was Andre that talked him into joining in GT Cup. And yeah, Doc has, I think, enjoyed his time so far. Fight between the two McLarens at the moment. The Paddock Motorsport McLaren in the hands of Tim Docker has got in his Pirelli wheel tracks the car of Phil Carter. So those two cars fighting in Group GTH. Just ahead of them is James Guess at the wheel of the Feathers Motorsport Aston Martin. So that's going to be something like 17th, 18th and 19th and overall, and 4th, 5th and 6th in Group GTH as we go back to the race leaders. Simon Orange still leading the way as he turns his way for the 11th time through Sheen Curve, and the top three are still together. McLaren from McLaren from McLaren. Three identical cars, certainly three different drivers, and run by three different teams as well. So it's the Orange Racing powered by JMH car of Simon Orange that leads the way. Right with him though is Lucky Kier at the wheel of the number 13 car. Race Lab run that one, and then it's Enduro Motorsport and Morgan Tilbrook that's next up as they work their way over the start finish line. Now Simon Orange, the reigning champion in GT Cup, also racing in British GT this year. Lucky Kira, we saw sporadic outings in GT Cup last year, also racing in British GT. And Morgan Tilbrook did most of the season in GT Cup last year, also racing in British GT this year. So these drivers know each other well, and they are pushing each other to the very limit at the moment. Sasha Cackard, be worth keeping an eye on the Audi R8 of Sasha Cackard that sits behind. Is he going any quicker than those ahead? No, on the last lap he was about 7/10 of a second slower, even though he set his best lap of the race. But the overall fastest lap of the race went last time out to Morgan Tilbrook. 1 minute 26.238 was what he posted. Still not quite as quick as the 124.9 that we saw in race 1 from James Wallace in the sprint race. So 30 minutes to go plus a few little bits of change, which means we've got there or thereabouts 4.5 minutes really before the first of the 2 pit stop window opens. Remember, the car's running at the front, so if you're in Group GTO, Group GT3, Group GTC, those are the more powerful cars. They pit first this weekend on a Saturday, at least. And they will pit when there's 26 minutes of the race remaining until there's 21 minutes of the race remaining. Arguably, they'll all come into the front end because the pros can't start the race, they can only take over, so get the quicker driver in as soon as you possibly can. If you're running in Group GTH, because we only have cars in Group GTH this weekend, if other groups had entries, they would also pit second. So Group GTH this weekend, those cars will pit between 21 and 15 minutes of the race remaining, and the Group GTH cars are any of those that are compliant with GT4 homologation. So out of Graham Hill Bend, along the Cooper Straight once more. Daylight from first to second and second to third looking pretty much identical. Has Sasha Kaka done anything to close up? No. Up towards us, so comes the fight for what is now the lead battle in Group GTO. Paul Bailey at the wheel of the Brabham was second in Group GTO. Well, it's now back to being the Moses Morgan shorter game once more. And Paul Bailey lost time on the previous lap. Lost about 3 or 4 seconds. Must have had a small issue or a moment somewhere. So this is now not just the fight for 5th and 6th. The orange Porsche and the white Mosler are fighting over the lead of the group, and those are arguably the 2 oldest cars we've got in the field actually. So the Porsche is, well, pretty long in the tooth now. It's the best part of what, 40-50 years old, that Porsche, albeit it's been developed and there's not much of the original car left. But the Mosler is, you know, knocking on for a good few years old now, but still going to show that the format that GT Cup use, you might be able to get an old car, but it still can be competitive in its respective group. Another good fight that's going on in Group GTH at the moment, and this is going to be Chris Hart, is it? Let's have a quick look. No, that is going to be John Curry fighting away with James Guess, the number 96 car. This will be for 3rd and 4th in Group GTH, but just off those are the 2 McLarens in the hands of Tim Docker and Philip Carter. So it's 16th, 17th, 18th and 19th overall, but it's 3rd, 4th, 5th and 6th in Group GTH. And again, just going to show the balance of performance works. Mercedes from Aston Martin, so that's normally aspirated front-engine Mercedes, turbocharged front-engined Aston Martin, and then 2 McLarens, which are rear-engined, all pretty much matching each other for pace with their respective drivers behind the wheel. James Guest brakes as late as he can. Can he try and get the overlap coming out of the corner to get himself onto the podium in Group GTH? No. John Curry having nothing of it. So, exiting Druids and starting to make their way downhill. John Curry didn't exactly grab the apex there at Graham Hill Bend, so maybe either carried a bit too much momentum or couldn't get the car rotated or didn't brake in time, but cost him a little bit of time there. And whilst those cars make their way out onto the Grand Prix circuit, Piers Pryor is down in the pit lane with Hugo Cook.
Yeah, we're down here in the, with Hugo Cook. I saw him getting his kit and I thought, good opportunity to chat to you. We chatted to you in this time exactly a few weeks ago at Donington. Sasha's looked like he's going really well out there. Car must be pretty good.
Yeah, it's not bad. I've not really driven today, and we both learning this GP circuit. But yeah, he's going well now. You know, the more laps you do, the quicker he gets.
Must be feeling more and more confident with every lap that you do.
Yeah, definitely, for sure. I've done 3 laps, so this is going to be interesting.
Interesting, definitely, and of course looking forward to driving the car and anger out on this GP circuit. It's a bit different to Donington, isn't it?
Yeah, it's more bumpy, you know, it's a bit more committed, there's not as much runoff, but both circuits are quick and yeah, the car feels good.
Brilliant, thanks for your time, Hugo. Good luck in the stint, and we'll see how you get on. Back to you, Mark.
Thanks a lot, Piers. Perfectly timed, because Sasha Kakad is just working his way through Hawthorne, and I'd imagine that where he is at the circuit at the moment is, by the time he gets to the start-finish line, that clock will be 26 minutes or less, so the pit window will be open. So it wouldn't surprise me if the Audi came in at the end of this lap, and the man that Piers has literally just spoken to, you know, switching from being interviewed to the next minute, iterate full race driver mode to jump on board that car. It's going to be nip and tuck. I don't think the pit window is going to be open for the leaders, is it? By the time they come over the start-finish line? No, they've got to go another lap because the pit window wouldn't be open if they dived for the pit lane. But for Hugo Cook, are we going to see Sasha Kaka come in ready to hand the Audi over to him this time? Yes, we do, because we have less than 26 minutes of the race to go. So for the cars running at the front, they can now come into the pit lane. And remember, this car is going to be stationary for 80 seconds. So from when it comes to a halt in the hands of Sasha Kakad, It parks at 45 degrees to when it's pushed back by the team and Hugo Cook is on board. Can't be any less than 80 seconds. Paul Bailey is in at the wheel of the Brabham BT62. That car will be stationary for 100 seconds because Paul drives with the Pro Ross Wiley, so they pick up 85 seconds, but they also finished second in Group GTO last time through at Donington Park, so they pick up 15 success seconds. Seamus Jennings is in to hand over also to his respective co-driver Greg Caton. I saw Warren Gilbert come in to hand over to Mrs Gilbert, Charlotte. He'll jump on board that car, but the leading trio still together, still as close as they were. The order remains the same, however. Simon Orange from Lucky Kira and Morgan Tilbrook. Now, are we going to see all of those come into the pit lane this next time through? The car that leads, Simon Orange, when he gives way to Tom Roach, 80 seconds in the pit lane. Lucky Kira giving way to Ewan Hankey. That car remains stationary for an extra 5 seconds. And for Morgan Tilbrook, when he gives way to Marcus Clutton, they will have an extra 20 seconds compared to the race leader Simon Orange. And there is Lucky Kira. He's had a problem. And that is that Sterling's. Yes, it is. It's on the apex of Sterling's where he's had the spin. And that's just before he's about to come into the pit lane, and that has rather undone all of the hard work that Lucky Kira has been doing. The car is running, need to get him out of harm's way. Sasha Kakad, having vacated the number 32 Audi R8, now hands it over to Hugo Cook. Very busy pit lane, but what we really need is Lucky Kira to get that car going. The difficulty is he can't go any further forward, otherwise he'll hit the barriers, and if he reverses in that race car, he's just not going to see what's coming. He's almost reliant on somebody telling him there's a gap in the traffic. The problem is the marshals are on the opposite side of the track and they'll be in his blind spot, so Lucky Kira has no idea what's going on behind, and thankfully he's managed to hook a gear, get the car onto the track, but I'm afraid all of the time has been lost. He's surely going to head straight into the pit lane because it will also give the team a chance just to check it over in case there was a reason why he spun in the first place, or if he's just lightly rubbed the barrier, they'll also be able to check. So it's such a shame for Lucky Kira, who just hadn't put a foot wrong, and then all of a sudden he's 90 degrees to the circuit in the blind spot. So Greg Caton has now taken over the car that's been vacated by the man from Northern Ireland, Seamus Jennings. Good to see GCAT in the championship. We didn't see them at Donington Park. That was always their plan. They were going to have to miss Donington Park, but they should be with us for the rest of the season. And the race lab McLaren is in. So Lucky Kira, body language tells you everything you want to know there. He is not happy with whatever happened, whether that was his own mistake or, yeah, just disappointing, isn't it? So there's no obvious signs of any damage to the front of the car where he might have nudged the barriers. If there's any damage towards the right rear, that might tell you there was a little bit of a knock, but no obvious signs there. And out of the pit lane comes the man from Cardiff. So Tom Roach, former MX5 champion, heads out onto the circuit, having taken over what was the race-leading car from Simon Orange. And that car, in theory, you would like to think should maintain the lead of the race because of all of the cars running at the front. Sasha Kaka giving way to Hugo Cook, only 80 seconds, and Simon Orange give way to Tom Roach, only 80 seconds. The other car that might stand half a chance of picking up the lead through all of this might be Morgan Short, because that car was only stationary for 60 seconds, so 20 seconds less, so we might see the Mosler potentially pick up the lead of the race. It has done anyway on merit at the moment because it hasn't pitted, and that doesn't surprise me because Morgan Short doesn't need to worry about handing over to anybody. He's going solo today. Marcus will pick up the car tomorrow and race it. So for Morgan Short, he leads the race but hasn't stopped as yet at the wheel of the Mosler. So around through Sheen Curve he will work his way. Dad Martin Short will be on the radio letting him know what he needs to do, that is absolutely for sure. And then as they start to work their way, or he starts to work his way up towards slower car of Doc Bush, the Porsche, are we going to see the Mosler dive for the pit lane? Off and nearly into the gravel goes John Curry as James Guess is able to finally wiggle through and pass, and the door is open for Tim Docker to try and steal the march as well at the wheel of the McLaren going wheel to wheel with the Mercedes. So it all gets rather busy now. The pros have taken over in terms of the quicker cars in the field. And did I see a little bit of rubbing there because Kev Clark was so keen to get past the Group GTH McLaren of Tim Docker. I think they got probably about as close as you want to get, really. The pit window is now open also for the Group GTH cars, so all the cars running at the front should have completed their pit stops by now, or will be in the process of doing so, but we've got less than 21 minutes remaining, which means all of the Group GTH cars, those that are GT4 homologated, can now come into the pit lane. big old wiggle for Richard Chamberlain there at the same point that he had the spin in the sprint race earlier on and got beached on the curbs, which brought about a safety car. But the glorious flame-spitting Porsche got away with that one. Now Ewan Hankey is on board the number 13 McLaren. It weaves its way past Kev Clark in the light blue Lamborghini, comes up to James Guess, who I think might be destined for the pit lane at the end of this lap, to hand the car over to Tom Canning. Yep, in comes James Guess, car that leads the Group GTH Championship standings coming into this weekend. 21-year-old Tom Canning, who has already been around racing GT cars since he was 16, 5 years now, about to take over that car, part of the Aston Martin Factory Junior team. Whereas for this man here, Kev Clark, he's been around racing probably twice as many years as Tom Canning has been born. So James jumps out of the car, Tom dives in, and driving duty's done for the day for the former Radical SR1 racer. Also see James out racing things like Citroen C1s in 24-hour races in the past. And also did a good chunk of racing in the Aston Martin Owners Club in a Porsche as well, where he was very successful. And some historic stuff. He's been a winner at POW in the past. There's a spin. That's Doc Bush. And that is coming out of Druids, I would suggest, on the run down in towards Graham Hill Bend, potentially, where he's had that off. So, yeah, Doc, former motorcycle racer. Yeah, it is. It's the exit of Druids where the Porsche has got away from him. Should get the car fired up from there and might be able to, on the dry grass, go uphill to give him a bit better visibility as to where he can rejoin. But the first thing he needs to do is get the engine fired up, I'm afraid. And the difficult thing is, on a warm day, once the engine stops, you get the heat soak. Now, this will ultimately be for the lead of the race. I did say I thought the race might be good for Morgan Short because he would be stopping 20 seconds less than Simon Orange give way to Tom Roach. So yeah, the Mosler, having completed its pit stop, does still continue to lead at this stage. So brilliant stuff. Well, I say it continues to lead. It doesn't quite, because some of the Group GTH cars haven't pitted. But once they pit, this ultimately will be for the lead of the race. And Morgan Short wants to press on here. The actual race leader at the moment is Chris Hart. The number 69 Make Happen Racing Mercedes hasn't pitted just as yet, but it will need to in the next 3 minutes and a bit. So for Morgan Short, he's second in the race, but knows full well the car ahead of him will be diving for the pit lane soon. So what he will absolutely want to do is try and keep that Group GT3 Tom Roach driven McLaren behind him. So squeezing the throttle. The Mosler should be a match for the McLaren, more than a match for McLaren in a straight line. The older car, the heavier car, won't quite have the cornering ability or the aero of the McLaren Evo that sits behind. This McLaren upgraded from what was normal GT3 specification for the 720S up to the Evo spec, which is the latest release of upgrades for the McLaren over the winter by Jason Hughes and the JMH team. Whereas the car that's ahead of it on the road is best part of, what, 20, 25 years older, but is still being pushed as hard as it possibly can by Morgan Short. And why would you not? You know, first time you've raced on the Brands Hatch Grand Prix circuit, you're still a very, very young driver, and you are utilising that car as best you can. You know you're going to gain 20 seconds in the pits, but you also know you're going to have to push, because arguably, in the nicest way, you've got the quicker drivers coming up behind. And I say quicker, and that's because Morgan Short is classed as a sporting driver, i.e. an AM. Tom Roach is classed as a pro-am, really. He's a sporting pro. So arguably the driver grading puts him at an advantage. And then you've got all the pros coming in now as well, the likes of Marcus Clutton and all the others starting to work their way through. So Morgan Short, you know, when you're a young driver, you're always learning. And talking to his father, Martin Short, this was what they wanted to do today. Give him the time behind the wheel of the car to get used to the circuit. His brother will largely drive the car tomorrow, but equally, pitch him up with the pros. See how he gets on. It gives you a benchmark. And they didn't quite get the opportunity to have that benchmark because the car faltered on more than one occasion at Donington Park for the first 4 rounds of the championship. Now, for Morgan Short, he is more than matching, isn't he, the car ahead? Still don't think we've seen Chris Hart come into the pits as yet, but he's got about a minute to do so. He's leading the race by 14 seconds overall, the number 69 Mercedes, but it is the sole car that hasn't pitted as yet. So leaving it until the very tail end of the window to hand that car over to Stephen Walton. So we should see the Merc, the number 69 Merc, heading for the pit lane shortly, and as soon as it does, then this car will fully pick up the race lead. And in fact, yeah, that Mercedes trundles its way down the pit lane now. Sister car in the pit lane looking slightly hot under the bonnet, isn't it? So it looks as though the John Curry and Phil Keane car is done for the day. The sister car pulls in now, which means that now we do see Morgan Short in the Mosler, the number 7 car, in the lead of the race. So out jumps Stephen Walton, out jumps Chris Hart, in jumps Stephen Walton. Morgan Short continues on his way, and last time through Morgan Short put in the best lap that the Mosler has done in the race so far. It was a 1:25.860 from Morgan Short, and that was 1.4 seconds quicker than Tom Roach could muster in the McLaren. Now there might have been traffic involved in that, but that is still a brilliant performance from Morgan Short. Say up until really back end of last year, he'd only driven MGs in the past, and then jumped into the Mosler to do a couple of races in the Classic Sports Car Club Slick Series, amongst other things, last year in the Mosler, but committed to a full season of GT Cup with the support, not just of the family, but of the National Motorsports Centre as well, or National Motorsports Academy, I should say. And he's leading the race and pulling away. So 14 minutes to go. David MacDonald there at the wheel of the car that he's taken over from Gilbert Yates. Gilbert Yates will be more than pleased with the stint that he's put in. This is the car that's being driven by James Guest, now in the hands of Tom Canning. That car is still running 4th in Group GTH at the moment, whereas the number 11 Lamborghini, not quite sure what happened to that car, because it was leading Group GTC. It did have to stop for 85 seconds in the pit lane, whereas the likes of Morgan Short only stopped for 60, so whereas the likes of other cars in Group GTC would have stopped for 60, like the Gilberts. But yeah, that number 11 McLaren, number 11 Lamborghini is now running 3rd in the group. Bit of a mistake there. Lots of rally crossing being done, but no harm done. The McLaren continues on its way. That's what Piers and I have been talking about. You don't quite get the turning point right to the blind entry to Sheen Curve. It pushes you wide on the exit. And that, I'm afraid, was a mistake there for Jordan Albert, who's partnered up with Tim Docker again for this weekend. So good to see Jordan and Tim back together. We saw a good chunk of them last year. Now this is going to be another fight, and this will be for 2nd and 3rd in Group GTO. Leading Group GTO is Morgan Short, who leads the race overall, but this is Richard Chamberlain now, coming under pressure from the pro driver Ross Wiley. The Scotsman sneaks up the inside and puts the Brabham BT62 through and up to 2nd in the group. So Ross Wiley, who's been racing more recently in the Porsche Carrera Cup GB. He's a former British GT champion in the GT4 class in an Aston Martin some years ago, with Jake Giddings, who is his teammate, who's also racing the Porsche Carrera Cup nowadays. But yeah, the Brabham goes through, and Ross has also set the fastest lap of the race. That was a few laps ago now, 1:24.407. But the noise this Brabham makes is absolutely astonishing. Great looking car as well. It's a real high-pitched, almost high-revving Ford-based V8 that sits in the car, and already having got past Richard Chamberlain, he's pulling away. But that is the difference between a car that literally is a year or two old to one that is the best part of a 40, 50-year-old car now, in the hands of Richard Chamberlain, who is a very clever engineer and has so developed that car over the years. It's always a pleasure to see it out there. Those spits of flame that we get so used to seeing in GT Cup out the back of the orange Peril. And good to see. I don't want to put the commentator's curse in it. Now, what's that problem for Ross Wiley there? Because all of a sudden, the Porsche goes back ahead of the Brabham, and there's no suggestion that there's any safety car, but the Brabham is slowing ever more all of a sudden. So Ross Wiley looked to be going along with no real issues, but the Brabham slowing ever more as it heads down the Cooper Straight. And is it going to continue around the lap, or is it going to turn right and into the Grand Prix paddock via the rear entrance? It's the latter, I'm afraid, which suggests that that's going to be a retirement for the Brabham. That is such a shame. Just as I was saying it was going well, I'm afraid the curse has struck again. Retirement for Ross Wiley and Paul Bailey, and the team will be disappointed with that. I mean, it may well be that they can create a fix on the car and get it back out there, but because it didn't complete that lap, it will lose that lap in reality, plus the time it's going to spend in the pits. And it comes to a halt. Are we going to see Ross remain behind the wheel of the car? If it's a simple fix, they'll get it back out there, but if there's any question mark that it might cause further mechanical damage to the car, they'll park it immediately. As Morgan Short continues to lead the way, but Tom Roach has managed to catch back up with him again. So Tom Roach there for the lead of the race at the wheel of the McLaren is not that far away again now. They're both setting their best lap times of the race that they've done so far last time through, but for Morgan Short it was a 1:25.7. For Tom Roach it was a 1:25.4. So 0.3 of a second gain, and the gap is down to just 1.1 seconds now. It looks as though they are... You see, I heard that there. It felt like the chain came off the sprocket. So, in the simplest way, the driver, Ross Wiley, just trying to say, yeah, all of a sudden it just lost drive. Whatever it was, all of a sudden there was just no drive on the car. So, could be electrical, it might be mechanical, but it's certainly going to be retirement by the look of things for that car. As Morgan Short continues on his merry way, looking to see if he can maintain the overall lead of the race. Now, there's still 10 minutes to go. Last lap time that Morgan put in was 0.2 of a second slower than Tom Roach, so the gap is still just closing down between the two cars that lead their respective groups, that being Group GTO that leads, Group GT3 in second place. This is Michael Broadhurst fighting away with Tom Canning. This is going to be for 16th and 17th overall, as Tom Canning sneaks up the inside of Michael Broadhurst and threads the Feathers Motorsport Aston Martin through ahead of the slightly older McLaren 570S in the hands of Michael Broadhurst. And that now means that Tom Canning picks up what is third in Group GTH, and down to fourth goes Michael Broadhurst. So important overtake that, but for Tom Canning, the next Group GTH car is the best part of probably 5 or 6 seconds up the road. So through comes Michael Broadhurst over the start-finish line, and no, the next Group GTH car is 16 seconds up the road, and that will be Seb Morris, former British GT champion and former Ginetta Junior champion. So 8.5 minutes remaining on the clock. Michael Broadhurst now trying to stay out the way of the Group GT3 car of Ewan Hankey, whilst the sad sight of the Brabham BT62 being pushed back into the garage. So work to do for Kendall Developments to understand exactly what the problem was with that particular car last time through, and why, in the words of Ross Wiley, the chain came off the sprocket. Now for the lead of the race through Graham Hill Bends, they are nose to tail this time through. So there is our race leader. There is right behind him Tom Roach. 0.6 of a second separate the pair of them. It's a warm day. How have they looked after their tyres? And a spin for Richard Chamberlain. That's coming out of Stirling's as he dropped the rear wheels into the gravel trap. It looks as though he's probably just on the grass, so he might just get away with that one, Richard Chamberlain. So yes, he does. He's able to rejoin. The rather dusty looking Porsche will continue on its merry way and will try and stay out of harm's way. Such a shame for Richard. He's had the pace. The car has not had the mechanical gremlins that sometimes that highly developed car can have, but a couple of spins over the course of the day. Whether that's something he's having to drive around and occasionally it catches him out, or whether it's just, the pure power that that car has, because again, as I mentioned earlier on, it's a very analogue car, really. I mentioned that about the Mosler. Well, ever more analogue is that Porsche. There are no creature comforts in it. So, with 7 minutes of the race still to go, I think Piers Pryor has managed to catch up with somebody else in the pit lane. Who have you got, Piers?
Yes, we're down at the JMH show and with Russ as well. It looked like you had a great fun stint out there.
Yeah, it was great. Really, really good. Really enjoyed it. If you think of this morning, missed practice because of the red flag and the press that was in. Qualied, I think we 3 Lambos in front of us, so I was 4th. Good race this morning, really good this morning. Came 4th, but then disqualification put me up to 3rd. Podium, and now, looks like, well, I think we came in 2nd on the break. Went to 1st in the pit changeover, and now I think sitting in the 2nd or 3rd. I don't know.
Hey, but great! It looks like a great fun out on circuit, and it's hard. Those Lambos look like they're quick.
They're really quick. They're 4 or 5 seconds ahead of us. So, yeah, I keep complaining to Jeff and to Chris, saying 5 seconds in a class is not fair. But hey, and I did manage to take one of them this time around, so I was pleased at that.
Even more rewarding when you do take them.
Oh God, dives up the inside of paddock. That's the way to do it as well.
Lovely, and I bet that Porsche out there is amazing on circuit.
do you know what? It's such a good car to drive. It's sticky, it does what you want it to do, and thankfully we've got the balance right now after about 4 races, and it's really good to drive. Excellent.
And the best news is we get to do it all again tomorrow.
Hey! Thanks, Piers.
Brilliant, thanks very much. Good to catch up with you. Back to you in the comments box, Mark.
Great to hear from Russ Lindsay, a real character, total enthusiast, love him to bits. Over the start-finish line comes the lead battle. They were absolutely together. I thought for a split second that Tom Roach had finally managed to pick the lock on the lead, but no. Due to the positioning of the car, Morgan Short still managing to hang on to this tenuous lead that he's got. Now, even if he lets the car behind go through, he'd still end up on the same amount of championship points because it's a GTO car that leads and it's a GT3 car that's second. But that's not what you want to do as a racing driver. You want the overall win. Martin Short is going to be down to, I would imagine, his knuckles now. The fingertips, the fingernails long went on Martin Short as he's been biting and watching his son trying to grab this first win in GT Cup. Yeah, the fingers have gone now. It must be down to the knuckles, and he'll carry on down to the wrist because we've still got another 5 minutes to go in this particular race at this stage. So it's Morgan Short from Tom Roach. Hugo Cook is there in third place with Marcus Clutton in fourth, and Greg Caton at the wheel of the GCAT Racing Porsche has come through well now to be there in fifth place, and Ewan Hankey completes the top six. Of course, that number 13 car in the hands of Lucky Kira, losing time with that spin at Stirling. So traffic being dealt with again. Brilliant traffic management from Morgan Short, just making sure he deals with the traffic as effectively as he can and is looking to try and see what he might be able to do. Car number 62 out of position at the start. Now that is Matty Evans who started, giving way to Kev Clark. Now that's the light blue Lamborghini. Now that is going to therefore pick up a penalty for that one, I'm afraid, which again is going to rather undo some of the hard work that Matty did in the first part of the race and the hugely experienced Kev Clark has done in part two. So 4 minutes of the race just under still remaining. Morgan Short still trying to drive the wheels off the Mosler to hang on to it. Further down through the order we've still got Tom Canning looking to see if he can close up. Well, here comes a lead battle towards us now down the end of the Cooper Straight. Mosler from McLaren at this stage. There's the Audi that's in third position in the hands of Hugo Cook. Now Hugo Cook is lapping 1.3 seconds quicker than the leading pair at the moment because they're largely holding each other up, and he's only 3.6 seconds off catching them. So we could have a grandstand finish here between three very different cars. The Mosler, the McLaren and the Audi. Now there's still another back marker that Hugo Cook will need to deal with in the third place number 32 Audi, but for Morgan Short, he is about to, I would imagine, start what will be the penultimate lap of the race, because by the time he comes over the start finish line there's only going to be enough time for the lap he will start and one more thereafter, which means around the Brands Hatch Grand Prix circuit it's what, just under 4.9 miles to try and cling on to this lead of the race. The lead advantage was 0.8 of a second last time through. It goes out to 9.5 of a second this time through. So again, Morgan Short pushing hard. Again, a back marker between himself and the car that's trying to hunt him down, but that soon gets dealt with by Tom Roach, who dispatches Tom Canning's Group GTH Aston Martin, as you would expect, effortlessly because of his extra braking ability in the GT3 car. Now Morgan Short will be starting to feel the pressure. He'll be starting to hear things in the car that aren't happening. A noise that wasn't there before, but it's just your mind playing tricks on you because he is desperately trying to grab this first win for himself and the team and the family, and for Kevin Riley, who has been supporting the team through the National Motorsport Academy. Group GTH, we've still got battles going on as well, and that was a battle for the lead of Group GTH I think we caught briefly there. That's Stephen Walton under attack from Seb Morris. Yeah, that's the Group GTH battle. Seb Morris, the pro, trying to unlock the door on the Sporting driver. Now, this was the car that was last to pit that still continues to lead, so the strategy has almost worked for Make Happen Racing. The problem for Stephen Walton is that, he's not a professional driver. He's just an am that does this for fun, and he's got the pro, Seb Morris, ganging up on him now at the moment. This is going to be the widest Mercedes you'll see this side of Christendom. He's going to want to try and get the car positioned. Seb Morris gets a better run, draws himself alongside. He's got the momentum coming over the start-finish line. They've got the race leader bearing down on them as well, but Seb Morris takes up the lead of Group GTH, whilst the overall leader, Morgan Short, is about to start the final lap of the race. So Morgan Short passed Stephen Walton. Then he'll want to try and get past the newly acquired Group GTH leading car, which is the Ram Racing Mercedes in the hands of former British GT champion Seb Morris. Seb sees the Mosler coming, just gives him time, and all of this has now meant that there's an extra couple of cars between Morgan Short and Tom Roach, who is bottled up behind Richard Chamberlain's Porsche at the moment. So the pendulum has more than swung in favour of Richard Chamberlain. Has another spin, this time coming out of Surtees. That would have been right across the nose of Tom Roach. So for Morgan Short, well, it looks as though there is half a lap to go between himself and a win in Group GTO, but more importantly, the overall win in the GT Cup Championship, round 6 of the 2023 Championship season. So down through Dingledell, up towards Sheen Curve, and then it's just Stirling, Clearways and Clark Curve to deal with, which is really just 2 more corners. The car stopped for 20 seconds less than most, but he had to drive the wheels off the Mosler. Martin Short, his father, will be watching on. There'll be tears in his eyes, I know that for sure. The fingernails have gone, the fingers have gone. I'd imagine the hand has gone now, and he's down to the wrist, if not the elbow, with tension. But Morgan Short comes through in the Mosler to win overall in the 6th round of the 2023 GT Cup Championship. Simon Orange and Tom Roach will come through to finish in 2nd position. There is Martin Short. Oh, he has still got the arms, but the fingernails have gone. Well done, Martin. Well done, the team. I knew he'd be happy with that. Simon Orange and Tom Roach come through to finish in 2nd place. Well done to the cameraman for getting that as well. Sasha Kakad and Hugo Cook are there in 3rd place, with Morgan Tilbrook and Marcus Clutton in 4th place. Shaman Jennings and Greg Caton will finish in 5th. Fingers crossed, because Lucky Kieran, Ewan Hankey were closing in, and I can confirm that the winner of Group GTC will be Gilbert Yates and David McDonald. Had a bit of a yo-yo race, really, bearing in mind that car started at the tail end of the field, and the winning Group GTH did go the way of Gustavo Xavier and Seb Morris. So a brilliant race that had a bit of everything, and there's certainly a story to tell there in the Short household as well, because Morgan Short certainly had to work for that one. There was no opportunity to relax, and yet the strategy that they wanted to work to, knowing full well they would stop for a slightly shorter period of time than others, it worked. It absolutely worked, and yeah, hats off to Morgan Short for not putting a wheel wrong in reality, and the car stayed together as well, because it was slightly recalcitrant at Donington Park, but they've worked hard to make sure that car has run so far this weekend faultlessly. So brilliant stuff from them. So the last few cars to take the checkered flag over the start-finish line, only now, just to confirm, comes Gilbert Yates and David McDonald to secure that win in Group GTC, and I think they were the last of the cars to take the checkered flag in what was a brilliant 6th race of the championship season. The good thing is we get to do it all again tomorrow, because the format's the same. We have a warm-up session in the morning, we have a qualifying session which sets the grid for the sprint race, we have the sprint race and the fastest laps from that give us the grid for the pit stop race. We do it all again tomorrow, so looking forward to that one. We'll also, I'm sure, get some sort of reaction from down there in the pit lane as well if we get the opportunity. But for the meantime, let's confirm the results. It's a win for Morgan Short in the Mosler, and in 2nd place, but winning Group GT3, is the pairing of Simon Orange and Tom Roach. Sasha Kakad and Hugo Cook were there in 3rd place, with Morgan Tilbrook and Marcus Clutton in 4th, and Seamus Jennings and Greg Caton coming through to 5th in the end, have Lucky Kira and Ewan Hankey in 6th place. Gilbert Yates, partnered with David McDonald, finished in 7th place, and Richard Chamberlain, despite a couple of spins, was there in 8th place, with Andre Borodin and Ed Peed in 9th place. Completing the top 10 is number 62 car of Matty Evans and Kev Clark. Outside of the top 10 in 11th place, it was Patrick Collins and Russ Lindsay, ahead of the Group GTH winning car, which is Gustavo Javier and Seb Morris, who in 12th place scooped up top honours in Group GTH. Stephen Walton and Chris Hart were there in 13th, with Chris Murphy in 14th. The pairing of James Guess and Tom Canning were 15th, ahead of Philip Carter and driver of Michael Broadhurst, he was partnered with in 16th place. Tim Docker and Jordan Albert were 17th, ahead of David Franklin and Ed Bridle, with David Waddington there in 12th place. He was partnered up with Adam Wilcox, I believe, for that one, and Warren and Charlotte Gilbert completed the top 20. Then just outside of the top 20 was Doc Bush. He was the last of the finishers. There were problems for Bailey and Wiley, for Curry and Keane, and for Wallace and Sam Mayer Loughlin. So that was the way it worked its way through for round 6 of the championship.